Many senior government officials, as well as businesses, have been implicated in corruption during the state capture inquiry. There have been calls for the arrest of those involved in the wrongdoing. Well, for more on this and what is hoping, I'm sure, for this group to come out of the State of the Nation address tomorrow, joined from our Cape Town studios, I've got the vice-chairperson of Business Unity South Africa, or BUSA as you'll note, Martin Kingston. Mr. Kingston, good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you for your time. What exactly do you want the President to say tomorrow?
Well, we think that the President needs to characterize this year as a fundamental shift into one of implementation. We're facing very significant economic challenges as a country, and we're relying heavily upon government working hand in glove with business, with other social partners, including labour and civil society, to actually address both the challenges and to make sure that we can achieve our potential as a country. There are a number of issues there. We have an anemic economic growth which has to be addressed, rising levels of unemployment, and the economy is not performing as it should. And obviously we've got a fundamental issue as well of corruption and maladministration where perpetrators need to be brought to book. So we're expecting the President in his State of the Nation address tomorrow to address all of these issues. I'm sure he will, with conviction and with purpose, so that we can actually have a roadmap that's set out ahead of us in terms of the steps that are going to be taken to actually reinstill levels of confidence in the country.
Many people were suggesting, Mr. Kingston, that when President Ramaphosa came into power with his background in economics and business, he would be the person to root out the corruption, to get rid of the unemployment and create the job opportunities. Do you think he's failed?
Not at all. This is a long and very complex process. He himself has said, and we endorse that state capture has eroded and undermined the capacity of the state, that competence and capability now needs to be reintroduced in the state, in all state-owned organizations, in many of its structures at national, provincial and local level. We think business can play a role there, but it takes time. And the problem is that whilst that has happened, confidence has eroded quite dramatically. We've got a backdrop of difficult economic circumstances globally, which has exacerbated the situation here on the ground and has meant that we've not been able to generate sustainable growth, make the levels of investment that need to be made to ensure that we have employment that can be created over time, that we can bring, as I said, perpetrators to book, and we can show that there's progress being made at the speed that many people would like to see. Having said that, we have no doubt that there are processes that have been underway now for a considerable period of time. The Zondo Commission perhaps is the most evident of them, where we now need to start that process of prosecution so that actually the full weight of the law can be felt by those who are wrongdoers.
When it comes to the state-owned entities, excuse me, Mr. Kingston. When it comes to the state-owned entities, of course, many people are very interested in South African Airways, but I imagine from Business Unity South Africa, none more important than, of course, that being Eskom. Many critics saying that while Eskom does have its problems, it's the mixed messaging from government that is even more infuriating.
Well, that applies equally with South African Airways. We think that in respect of all state-owned enterprises, there needs to be a consistent and aligned position by government. In the case of Eskom, we all acknowledge that it represents a fundamental threat to the economic stability of the country. I think it's well reported that government, with business, labour and civil society represented by community, is engaged in very serious discussions, both in terms of how we can address the operational and structural issues of Eskom, as well as the associated financial challenges that have emerged, the level of debt that is sustained, and that we need to root out many of the problems that have bedeviled not only Eskom but SAA and other systemically important state-owned enterprises, and that is one of the issues that is at the top of our agenda and we hope will be prioritised by the President. And
you're going to have the chance this evening, Mr. Kingston, I understand, in the state capture event taking place, so one can only imagine this the day ahead of the State of the Nation address. This wasn't by accident. What's the event about?
Well, this is an event that has not been actually organised by BUSA, although one of our senior colleagues is participating in it. But we do believe that with the amount of state capture that has taken place, maladministration and corruption that we have seen throughout not only the public sector but the private sector as well, that the time has come now to hold people to account, that very senior high-profile people must be prosecuted in the public eye and held to account so that consequences and consequence management can be seen to occur throughout the economy and indeed throughout society. We think that will send a very strong signal to wrongdoers and perpetrators, and hopefully will set the country on a more appropriate, morally correct course.
We've been hearing reports this week, Mr. Kingston, before I say goodbye, that there could be a disruption from a political party in Parliament tomorrow. They are against Pravin Gordhan holding his current political position. They blame him for much of the issues the country is facing. Do you think this is the right way for politicians to be handling a situation like this?
We think that undermines confidence completely in South Africa. We don't support it at all. We think that Minister Gordhan is one of President Ramaphosa's key cabinet ministers with responsibility for some critical state-owned enterprises. He serves at the pleasure of the President. We as business fully support the President and the way in which he's approached trying to turn around the economy and indeed the social fabric of society. We do not support and indeed we condemn such types of activities in Parliament should it occur tomorrow.
And I appreciate your time in speaking to us here on Upfront today. Martin Kingston, thank you indeed for your time, Vice-Chairperson of Business Unity South Africa.